They said the statue was just stone, until his touch made it cry. The lamplight caught the curve of her cheek first, then the delicate arch of her throat. Dr. James Ashford leaned closer, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air of the ruins. 3 months cataloging artifacts on this godforsaken frontier world, and he'd never seen craftsmanship like this. The statue stood in the temple's center, 7 feet of impossible beauty rendered in stone that seemed to hold its own inner light. He shouldn't be here. The site was officially sealed, but Director Hammond's under-the-table contract paid too well to ignore. Document everything before the planetary government buried it all. Standard corporate archaeology. Get in, get the data, get out before anyone noticed. James circled the figure, recording measurements on his datapad. Whoever she'd been meant to represent commanded attention. Warriors build beneath flowing robes, one hand raised as if reaching for something just out of reach. The artist had captured something in her expression, defiance mixed with sorrow. He'd seen that look before in the mirror most mornings. The temple's architecture didn't match anything in the database. Too old, too sophisticated for the official timeline. The ruling ascendancy claimed their people had always been here, alone. But human script marked some of the deeper chambers. Someone was lying about history. His glove caught on a rough edge as he steadied himself against the statue's base. The fabric tore, his bare palm pressed against her outstretched hand. Heat surged up his arm. James jerked back, but the stone beneath his fingers had gone warm, almost feverish. Impossible. The ruins ran cold enough to see your breath. Light bloomed in the statue's eyes, vivid green like summer leaves backlit by sun. Cracks spiderwebbed across her face, her shoulders, down her torso. Not breaking, peeling away. What the? Liquid streamed from her eyes, cutting tracks through the stone dust coating her cheeks. Not water. Something thicker, opalescent, leaving trails that glowed faintly in the lamplight. The cracks widened. Chunks of outer stone fell away, revealing smooth skin beneath, green-tinged but undeniably skin. Warm, living. Her chest expanded, a rasping inhale, desperate and huge, like someone breaking the surface after too long underwater. James scrambled backward. His boot caught on debris, and he went down hard, datapad skittering across ancient tiles. The statue, the woman, lurched forward. More stone cascaded off her shoulders. She caught herself on the pedestal, fingers digging into rock that crumbled under her grip. Her eyes found him, focused, aware. "You touched me," she said. The words bypassed his brain entirely, hitting somewhere deeper. Not English. Not anything he'd heard before. But he understood perfectly, the way you understand a lover's whisper in the dark. I was just documenting." She pushed off the pedestal and nearly collapsed. James caught her on instinct, his hands closing around her upper arms. The stone coating her body felt rough against his palms, but underneath, muscle shifted. She was solid, real, impossibly alive. "How long?" Her voice scraped like rusted metal. "How long was I?" "I don't know what you are," James said, his heart hammered against his ribs. "You were a statue. You've been a statue the entire time I've been here." Her fingers wrapped around his wrist, strong enough to hurt. Her eyes searched his face with an intensity that made him want to look away and hold her gaze at the same time. "Human," she breathed. "You're human." "Yes." Something broke in her expression. Relief, grief, terror, all of it crashing together. More of that luminous liquid spilled down her face. Tears, she was crying. "They said it was impossible, that no human would ever—" She swayed. James tightened his grip, supporting more of her weight. "I felt you, every day, every year, conscious but frozen. Do you understand? I was awake." His stomach turned over. "How long?" "I don't know. Time meant nothing in the stone." She lifted one hand, staring at her fingers as they flexed. Stone still clung to her forearms, cracking further with each movement. "What year is it, by the old calendar?" James told her. She went still. 247 years, she whispered. "I've been stone for 247 years. The words hung in the cold air between them. James opened his mouth, closed it. "What did you say to that? Sorry? How are you feeling?" His hands were still on her arms, her fingers still circled his wrist, and neither of them seemed capable of letting go. "Who are you?" he managed. "Valeria, third daughter of the Crystal Court, commander of—" She stopped, laughed, bitter and sharp. Commander of nothing now. It's all gone. Why were you turned to stone? Her eyes met his again, haunted, ancient. I fell in love with one of your kind. The Ascendancy considers it the highest crime. They killed him, made me watch. Then they froze me here, as a warning to anyone else who might forget their place. The temperature in the room seemed to drop another 10 degrees. James became acutely aware of every point of contact between them. Her hands, his hands, the way she leaned into him because her legs couldn't quite hold her weight yet. The Ascendancy still rules, he said quietly. They control this entire sector. Then nothing has changed. She straightened, pulling away from him, immediately swayed. He caught her again. We need to. A sound split the air, high-pitched, oscillating, alarm klaxons, ancient but still functional, echoing through the temple complex. Valeria's head snapped up. No already? What is that? Proximity sensors. I triggered them when I woke. Her fingers dug into his shoulders. How many exits does this chamber have? Just the one I came through. But then we're trapped. She pushed him toward the doorway. Run, now. If they find you with me, they'll kill you. What about you? Her smile held no humor. I'm already dead, have been for centuries, but you're alive, human, and if the Ascendancy finds out you freed me, finds out that human touch can break their strongest sentence. She gripped his face between her palms, forcing him to meet her eyes. They will burn this entire world to hide the truth. Run. Light bloomed in the corridor beyond, not lamplight, harsh and white and moving fast. Too late, Valeria said softly. The first enforcer came through the doorway 3 seconds later, pulse rifle already raised. Valeria moved like water, like violence. One moment she stood beside James, weak and trembling. The next she'd closed the distance to the enforcer, her hand wrapping around the barrel of his rifle. She twisted. Metal shrieked. The weapon came apart in her grip. The enforcer's helmet display lit up, targeting systems trying to lock on. Valeria drove her palm into his chest plate. The impact sent him flying backward into 2 more enforcers crowding through the doorway. They went down in a tangle of armored limbs. Go, Valeria's voice cracked like a whip. James ran. Not away, his archaeologist's brain kicked in, processing the temple's layout, the chamber configurations he'd mapped over 3 months. There. A service tunnel he'd marked as too unstable to explore. Their only chance. Left, he shouted. Follow me. Energy fire painted the walls blue-white. Stone exploded where his head had been a heartbeat before. Valeria caught his hand and pulled him around the corner. Her fingers laced through his, grip crushing. More stone flaked off her skin where they touched, revealing the green-tinted flesh beneath. The tunnel mouth gaped ahead, partially collapsed. James squeezed through the gap. Valeria followed, her broader shoulders scraping rock. Behind them, commands echoed in a language his translator struggled to parse. Military codes, probably. Strike teams coordinating. How many? Valeria gasped. The run was costing her. 2 centuries as stone didn't leave you in fighting shape. At least a dozen, maybe more outside. They'll have aerial units, orbital surveillance. She stumbled. James caught her around the waist, taking more of her weight. We can't reach the surface. They'll cut us down the moment we emerge. Then we go deeper. Deeper is death. The lower levels are unmapped, which means they can't track us as easily. James adjusted his grip on her, feeling the play of muscle beneath stone-rough skin. Trust me, I'm good at this. Her laugh came out breathless. I don't have much choice. The tunnel sloped downward, treacherous with loose rock and the detritus of centuries. James's headlamp cut a narrow cone through absolute darkness. Behind them, lights bobbed, pursuit closing in. The enforcers moved with military precision, their armor's servos whining faintly in the stillness. Valeria's breathing grew labored. James felt her weight increase as her legs gave out incrementally. Keep moving, she gritted out. Don't stop for me. Not happening. I'm slowing you down. Leave me in. I said not happening. He pulled her into a side passage, barely more than a crack in the rock. Squeezed them both into shadow. We rest for 30 seconds. That's it. They pressed together in the narrow space, chest to chest. Her breath came hot against his neck. Even through her exertion, he caught something else. a smell like rain on hot stone, mineral and alive. Her fingers clutched his jacket. "Why?" The word ghosted against his skin. "You don't know me, don't owe me anything." "You were a person they turned into a statue for 200 years. James kept his voice low. "That's all I need to know." Light swept past their hiding spot, footsteps, radio chatter, the patrol moved on. Valeria tilted her head back, meeting his eyes in the dimness. Hers still glowed faintly, phosphorescent green in the darkness, beautiful and alien, and fixed on him with an intensity that made his mouth go dry. "The man I loved," she said. "His name was David. He was human, an explorer like you, curious about everything, brave enough to see past what we were told was possible." "What happened to him?" Vorian happened. Hatred turned her voice to acid. "My betrothed, the man I refused to marry. He had David arrested on fabricated charges, espionage, sedition. They executed him in the Crystal Court while I was forced to watch." Her fingers tightened on James's jacket. "Then they gave me a choice, accept the marriage or face eternal punishment." I spat in Vorian's face. James felt something cold settle in his gut. This Vorian? He's still alive? If the Ascendancy still rules, he rose with them. Probably runs their security forces by now. She pushed off the wall, strength returning incrementally. He always was ambitious. Turning me to stone wasn't just punishment, it was a demonstration, a warning to anyone else who might question species purity. They moved again, descending through passages that grew steadily older. The architecture changed. James's trained eye caught details, human construction techniques mixed with alien design, collaboration, integration. "They're lying," he said. "The Ascendancy, the official history says your people were always alone here. But these ruins tell a different story. Story that humans and your kind built this place together." Valeria stopped so abruptly he nearly ran into her. She turned, catching his face between her hands. Stone still clung to her palms, rough against his cheeks. "Say that again." "The construction patterns, the materials, some of this is definitely human engineering. Old, pre-colony old. Your people and mine weren't just aware of each other, we worked together." Something flickered in her expression, hope maybe, or recognition. "I knew," she whispered. "David and I, we found evidence, records, but Vorian destroyed everything before we could make it public. That's why he really wanted me silenced, not just because I loved a human, but because I knew the truth." Energy fire lit up the tunnel behind them. The enforcers had found their trail. "Move," James said. They ran. Valeria's strength surged back, some reserve of will overriding her body's exhaustion. She pulled ahead, then stopped at a junction of 3 passages. "Which way?" James's headlamp swept across each opening. The rightmost passage showed tool marks, regular spacing, deliberate. "There, it's worked stone, means it leads somewhere." They plunged into darkness. The passage opened suddenly into a chamber that stole James's breath. His lamp couldn't find the far wall. The space felt massive, the air different, stale, undisturbed for centuries. Valeria's hand found his in the dark. Her fingers intertwined with his, this time gentle rather than desperate. "There's something here," she said quietly. "Can you feel it?" James could, a presence, a weight. His lamp beam swept across the chamber floor. And found the first body. Not a body, a statue, humanoid. Frozen mid-stride, his lamp found another and another, dozens of them, hundreds, arranged throughout the chamber in careful rows like soldiers on parade. "What is this place?" James breathed. Valeria released his hand, walked toward the nearest figure. Her fingers traced the statue's face. "I know her," she said. Her voice shook. "Lieutenant Sarah. She served under me. Disappeared 3 years before they took David." James moved to the next statue, male, human features, frozen in an expression of surprise. "Valeria," he said carefully, "I don't think this is a temple." She turned to face him, understanding and horror warred in her expression. "It's a prison," she finished. "They didn't just freeze me, they froze everyone." James's headlamp swept across the chamber, revealing more frozen figures with each pass. The scale overwhelmed him, rows upon rows stretching into darkness. Not dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands. "They were all like you," he said, "in relationships with humans?" Valeria moved between the statues, her hand trailing across shoulders, faces, each touch reverent, grieving, Others probably just spoke out against the purges, or helped someone escape, or refused to report their neighbors. She stopped before a smaller figure. Her breath caught. Eliana. The statue depicted a young woman, features similar to Valeria's but softer, younger. One hand reached forward as if pleading. Your sister? She was 16. Valeria's voice went hollow. She tried to testify on my behalf at the trial. Vorian had her arrested that same day. I hoped they'd just exiled her, but they did this. Her fingers traced her sister's frozen cheek. She's been here, aware, trapped for 2 centuries. James felt bile rise in his throat. The sheer scope of the cruelty staggered him. This wasn't punishment, it was genocide, cultural erasure. Anyone who threatened the narrative simply removed and hidden away. We need to document this, he said. His archaeologist's instincts kicked in despite the horror. Evidence, proof of what they've done. Evidence won't matter if we're dead. It will if we get it to the right people. James pulled out his datapad, but the screen flickered. No signal this deep. Once we reach the surface... We're not reaching the surface. Valeria turned from her sister's statue. Not like this, not running. The moment we emerge, they'll kill us both and collapse the entire site, bury the truth forever. Then what do you suggest? Her eyes met his, fierce, determined. We don't run, we fight. Against how many? I counted at least 12 enforcers up there. More than that by now. Vorian won't send amateurs. She moved to the chamber's far wall where James's light caught carved symbols. But he won't expect us to go where we're going. Which is the capital. Her fingers traced the carvings, human script mixed with her people's language. These are transit markers. This complex isn't just a prison. It's a node in an old network. There's a way from here directly into the city's foundations. James processed that. An ancient subway system? Close enough. Built during the integration period when your kind and mine lived together openly. She glanced back at him. The Ascendancy sealed most of the access points, but they couldn't destroy everything. Too much infrastructure depends on it. So we take their own transport network into their stronghold. James felt a smile tug at his mouth despite everything. That's insane. Do you have a better plan? Not even close. Footsteps echoed from the passage they'd used. Enforcer squads converging. Valeria grabbed his hand. This way, stay close. They ran deeper into the chamber. James's light caught more details as they moved, not just statues but equipment, weapons, supplies. The people frozen here hadn't just been arrested, they'd been preparing for something. They were organizing, he said, building a resistance. And Vorian found out. Valeria vaulted over a fallen pillar. He moved fast, swept up everyone involved in a single night. I was just the most visible example. The far wall held a door, massive, ornate, sealed with symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. Can you open it? James asked. Valeria pressed her palm against the central glyph. Nothing happened. She tried another combination. Still nothing. Her jaw clenched. It requires royal authorization, but my biometrics should work unless... She stopped, looked at her hand. Stone still clung to patches of her skin. Unless the stone is interfering. Let me try. James stepped close behind her. His hand covered hers, his chest against her back. Heat radiated between them where they touched. Your biometrics plus human contact. That's what freed you. Maybe it's what opens this. Together they pressed against the seal. For 3 heartbeats, nothing. Then light bloomed beneath their joined palms, green and gold spreading through the carved channels like water finding its course. The door shuddered, ancient mechanisms groaned to life. It swung inward, revealing a corridor that stretched beyond sight. Emergency lighting flickered on, weak but functional after centuries of dormancy. It worked, Valeria breathed. She turned in the circle of his arms, still pressed close. Her eyes searched his face. How did you know? I didn't. Just seemed logical. His hands had settled on her waist without conscious thought. You needed human contact to wake. Maybe the old systems were designed that way, requiring both species to access critical infrastructure. Cooperation encoded into the architecture. Something fierce and bright kindled in her expression. They can't erase that. It's literally built into the foundations of our world. Energy fire struck the doorframe. James pulled Valeria through, and the door slammed shut behind them. He heard impacts on the other side, muffled curses in the enforcer's language. "That won't hold them long," Valeria said. "Doesn't need to." James studied the corridor. Smooth walls, clean lines, clearly engineered for high-speed transit. Just needs to buy us enough time to get moving. They found the platform 50 meters down. Sleek pods waited on magnetic rails, dusty but intact. Valeria ran her hands over the nearest one's controls. "I used these as a child," she said quietly. "Before the ascendancy. My father would take me to the old districts, show me where the integration worked, where your people and mine built things that lasted." She looked up at James. He was trying to teach me something. That fear was the poison, not the partnership. Sounds like a wise man. Vorian had him killed in the coup. She activated the pod. It hummed to life, interior lights warming. I was 23, Eliana was 14. Everything changed overnight. James climbed in beside her. The pod's interior forced proximity. Seats meant for 2 passengers pressed close together. Valeria's thigh aligned with his as she worked the controls. "How long to the capital?" he asked. 20 minutes at full speed, but we'll emerge in the Undercity. Old manufacturing districts. I had contacts there before." She stopped herself. "That was 200 years ago. They're all dead now." "Maybe not." James thought about the statues they'd left behind. Maybe they're frozen too. Maybe there are more like you scattered across the system. "And maybe we're about to die trying to prove something no one wants to hear." But she smiled as she said it, grim but genuine. "Hold on." The pod shot forward. Magnetic rails hummed beneath them. They accelerated into darkness together, heading toward the heart of the city that had broken them both. Valeria's hand found his in the darkness. This time neither of them let go. The pod slowed as it entered the capital's Undercity. Through the viewing port, James glimpsed vast caverns carved from living rock. Industrial equipment rusted in the shadows, forgotten, deliberately abandoned. "This was the heart of it," Valeria said softly. "The integration, joint manufacturing facilities, mixed crews. My grandfather oversaw the labor agreements." Her fingers traced patterns on the armrest. "After the coup, they shut it all down, claimed human workers were unreliable, dangerous. Within 5 years, they'd rewritten history so completely that most people believed we'd always been separate." The pod docked with a hiss of equalizing pressure. They stepped onto a platform thick with dust. Emergency lighting gave everything a sickly amber cast. "Where do your contacts live?" James asked. "Lived 200 years ago." Valeria oriented herself, checking corridor markers. But the resistance always had fallback protocols. Dead drops, safe houses. If anyone survived, they'll have maintained the network. They moved through silent streets. The architecture showed the same integration James had seen in the ruins. Human pragmatism married to alien aesthetics. Beautiful, functional, and completely deserted. "It's like a tomb," he said. "It is a tomb. This is where they buried a future that terrified them." Valeria stopped at an intersection, studying the buildings. Her eyes narrowed. "There, 3rd level. See the mark?" James followed her gaze. A symbol scratched into metal, barely visible. Could have been random damage. Could have been a sign. "You're sure?" "No, but it's all we have." The building's entrance hung open. They climbed stairs in darkness, Valeria's eyes providing enough phosphorescence to navigate by. On the 3rd level, she knocked on a door in a specific pattern. She knocked again. The door opened a crack. A weapon's barrel emerged, followed by a voice speaking rapid fire in the alien tongue. "Stand down, soldier," Valeria said. Her voice carried command even exhausted and half covered in stone. "I'm Commander Valeria, 3rd of the Crystal Court. I'm invoking Protocol 77 Red." The barrel lowered. The door opened wider, revealing an older male, grizzled and scarred. His eyes widened. "Commander," his voice cracked, "that's not possible. You're dead. Everyone saw me turn to stone. But I'm not dead, Corin." The name hit James like a physical blow. This was the resistance leader from 2 centuries ago. Still alive, still fighting. Corin's gaze shifted to James. "And you brought a human." "I brought the man who freed me. James, meet General Corin, my former military attaché and apparently the stubbornest bastard in the sector." Corin's scarred face cracked into something almost like a smile. Someone had to keep the fires burning, Commander. He stepped back, admitting them. Get inside. Patrol sweeps happen every 4 hours. The safe house interior surprised James. Not abandoned or decrepit, but maintained. Equipment hummed on low power, communications gear lined one wall, maps covered another. You've been doing this for 200 years? James asked. Not alone. Corin moved to the communications station. After the purges, those of us who escaped went deep, built new networks, slower, quieter. We couldn't risk another sweep. His fingers danced across controls. But we've been waiting. For a catalyst, a symbol. I'm no symbol, Valeria said. I'm one person. You're the heir apparent who chose love over power and paid the price everyone feared. Corin pulled up displays. Your story became legend down here. The princess who defied an empire. If people know you're alive, they'll dismiss it as propaganda. Not if we prove it. James stepped forward. Not if we show them what I found, the prison complex, thousands of people frozen in stone, evidence of systematic cultural genocide. Corin's expression sharpened. You have documentation? Images, readings, location data. James pulled out his datapad, everything an archaeologist documents by instinct. Then we have our proof. Corin began transferring files. The central archives hold the original records before the revisionism. If we can access them, broadcast the truth alongside your evidence. The archives are in the Crystal Court itself, Valeria interrupted. The most heavily guarded location in the capital. I know. I've been planning this infiltration for 160 years. Corin's smile held grim satisfaction. Just needed the right people to pull it off. They spent the next hours reviewing the plan. Corin's network had infiltrated the court's maintenance systems, security rotations, access protocols. He'd recruited people across decades, building a cell so distributed that no single purge could destroy it. We go tomorrow night, Corin said. During the ascension ceremonies, half the security forces will be at the public celebration. What about Vorian? Valeria's voice carried edges. He'll be there, commanding. I'm counting on it. Corin met her eyes. He thinks he won 2 centuries ago. Let's remind him otherwise. As Corin stepped away to coordinate with his network, James found Valeria on the balcony overlooking the Undercity. She stood at the railing, backlit by emergency lights, stone still clinging to her shoulders like epaulets. Having second thoughts? He asked quietly. Third and fourth. She didn't turn. A day ago, I was stone. Now I'm planning to infiltrate the most secure facility on the planet and start a revolution. We can still run, find a transport, get you off-world. To what end? Vorian's reach extends across the sector. She finally looked at him. And there are thousands still frozen. My sister, Corin's family, everyone who dared imagine something better. Her hand found his. I can't abandon them. I know. James moved closer, his chest against her back, his arms bracketing her against the railing. For what it's worth, I wouldn't let you anyway. She turned in his arms. This close, he could see where the stone had fallen away completely, revealing the green-tinted skin beneath. Smooth, warm, alive. Her hand came up to cup his jaw. Why are you doing this? She asked. You could have left me in those ruins, run before the enforcers arrived, been on a transport off-world by now. I'm an archaeologist. I spend my life digging up the past. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But you're not the past. You're proof that the truth survives, that love survives, even when they try to bury it. Her lips met his, soft at first, questioning, then deeper as his arms tightened around her waist and hers wrapped around his neck. She tasted like rain and stone and something indefinably alien. He didn't care. His hands slid under the rough fabric of her robes, finding skin that sparked heat where they touched. She pulled back just enough to breathe. If we do this, when we do this, everything changes for both of us. Good. He kissed her again, harder. I'm tired of things staying the same. They made it to the sleeping quarters Corin had indicated. The door barely closed before they were tangled together again, hands learning the geography of each other's bodies. The stone that still clung to her shoulders cracked and fell away wherever his fingers traced. She gasped against his mouth as his palm found the small of her back, skin to skin, generating heat that built like wildfire. Her hands slid under his shirt, nails dragging lightly across his ribs. His breath caught. She smiled against his jaw. "Sensitive," she murmured. "Everything about this is sensitive." His mouth found her throat. She arched into him. "Tell me if—" "Don't stop." Her leg hooked around his hip. "Don't you dare stop." They tumbled onto the narrow bed. Clothes became obstacles quickly shed. She rose above him, her hair falling like a curtain around them both, eyes glowing in the darkness. Beautiful. Alien. His. "James," she breathed. "I'm here." His hands spanned her waist. "I'm right here." When they came together, something sparked between them, not metaphorical. Actual light, green gold pulsing where their skin met. Valeria's eyes widened. "Is that—" she started. "I don't know." He pulled her down, kissing her deeply. "Don't care." They moved together, finding rhythm, building heat. The light intensified with each touch, each gasp, each moment of connection. When she shattered in his arms, the remaining stone covering her body cracked and fell away completely, leaving only smooth skin and a woman fully alive for the first time in centuries. He followed her over the edge moments later, her name on his lips like a prayer. Afterward, she lay against his chest, her breathing slowly evening out. His fingers traced patterns on her shoulder blade. "Tomorrow," she said quietly, "we might die. Then tonight was worth it." She lifted her head, meeting his eyes, smiled, real and unguarded. "Yes," she agreed, "it was." The crystal court rose above the Capitol like a blade. James studied it from the maintenance tunnel entrance, watching ceremonial lights paint the sky in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Thousands gathered in the plaza below for the Ascension ceremonies. Voices rose in synchronized chants. "Ready?" Valeria adjusted the stolen uniform Corin had provided. It fit poorly across her shoulders, but in the chaos of the celebration, no one would look too closely. "No," James said honestly, "but let's go anyway." They moved with a group of technicians heading to their shift change. Corin's network had infiltrated the maintenance crews decades ago. No one questioned two more bodies in the flow of workers. The court's lower levels bustled with activity. Food service, equipment checks, the machinery that kept a government running while politicians celebrated above. Valeria navigated with muscle memory, her path taking them deeper. "You've been here before," James murmured. "I grew up here." Her jaw tightened. "Vorian proposed to me in the West Garden. I said no. He smiled and told me I'd reconsider. 3 days later, he had David arrested." They reached a service elevator. Valeria's palm print still registered in the system. No one had bothered removing a dead woman's credentials. The lift climbed smoothly, carrying them toward the archive levels. "Security checkpoint ahead," she warned. 2 guards minimum, possibly more during the ceremonies. "Can you talk our way through?" "Unlikely. They'll scan for weapons, verify identities." She met his eyes. "This is where it gets messy." The elevator doors opened. 2 guards stood at attention, pulse rifles held ready, their helmets swiveled toward the new arrivals. "Credentials," the first one demanded. Valeria moved. Not with the exhaustion that had plagued her since awakening, but with the fluid precision of a warrior in her prime. She closed the distance before either guard could react, her hand striking the first one's throat. He went down choking. The second one brought his rifle up. James grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and swung hard. The guard crumpled. "So much for subtle," James said. Subtle died 2 centuries ago. Valeria stripped the guards of their access cards and weapons, handed James a rifle. "Can you use this?" "Point and shoot?" "Close enough." They moved fast through corridors that grew progressively more secure. Biometric scanners, retinal readers. Each one accepted Valeria's credentials with a soft chime that felt like mockery. Dead woman walking through her own palace. The archive doors stood 3 meters tall, carved with symbols representing every major historical moment. James recognized none of them, all created after the purges, all lies. Valeria pressed her palm to the central lock, added her other hand. Nothing happened. "It needs 2 royal signatures," she said. "My father and I used to access these together." Her voice went flat. "They changed it after he died." "Try this." James placed his hand over hers. "It worked before." Light bloomed where their skin met. The lock recognized something, royal blood mixed with human contact. The doors ground open. The archive stretched beyond sight. Data cores hummed with centuries of accumulated knowledge. Holographic displays flickered to life as they entered, responding to Valeria's presence. Search for pre-coup records, she commanded. Integration period. Keyword, human cooperation. Files cascaded across displays, images, documents, video feeds, all showing what the current regime denied. Humans and Valeria's people working together, building together, living together, loving. There, James pointed at a cluster of files marked with highest security seals. Those are what they're hiding. Valeria accessed them. Her breath caught. These are petrification orders, thousands of them, arrest warrants for anyone with documented human contact. She scrolled further. They're all still active. Everyone frozen in that complex, their sentences never officially ended. Which means legally you can reverse them. If I had authority, which I don't, the ascendancy controls. The ascendancy seized power through a coup. James moved to another terminal, pulling up constitutional records. Your father was the legitimate ruler. You're his heir. According to their own laws, you have more authority than any of them. Valeria stared at the documents. They'll never accept that. They won't have a choice if we broadcast it. James connected his datapad, uploading everything he'd documented at the ruins. Your testimony, my evidence, these files, all transmitted simultaneously across every major network. Vorian will shut it down. Not if we use the Ascension ceremony feeds. James worked faster. Corin said half the sector tunes in, billions of people watching live. If we hijack that signal... Alarms shrieked through the archive, red light bathed everything. They found us, Valeria said. Then we work faster. James's fingers flew across controls. How long until you can trigger the broadcast? 2 minutes, maybe 3. I'll buy you 5. He grabbed the pulse rifle and moved to the archive entrance. Through the doorway, he saw them coming. Dozen of enforcers in full combat armor, and at their center, a figure in ceremonial robes that screamed authority. Lord Commander Vorian stepped forward. His face held the kind of beauty that became cruel through expression alone. He smiled when he saw Valeria. Still alive, he said. His voice carried perfectly despite the distance. I should have expected nothing less. You always were stubborn. Vorian. Valeria moved to stand beside James, still compensating for inadequacy with displays of power. His smile never wavered. You threw away an empire for a human. I gave you the chance to reconsider. You chose stone instead. I chose love. You wouldn't understand the concept. I understand that your human died screaming, that you spent 2 centuries conscious but frozen, that you're going to die today along with this new pet you've acquired. Vorian gestured. Enforcers raised weapons. Last chance. Surrender. Accept your place. I might even let him live. Counter-offer. Valeria's hands moved across the terminal behind her without looking. You surrender. Step down. Face trial for crimes against your own people. Vorian laughed. With what authority? Mine. She straightened. I am Valeria, 3rd of the Crystal Court, heir to the throne you stole, and I'm invoking emergency powers under the old constitution to reverse every illegal sentence passed by your regime. No one will follow you. They will when they see this. She hit the final key. Every display in the capital blazed to life. The Ascension ceremony feeds cut out, replaced by Valeria's face, her testimony, James's evidence, the frozen thousands, the deleted history, all of it broadcast across the sector simultaneously. Vorian's composure cracked. Kill them, now. Energy fire lit the archive. James pulled Valeria down as the first volley struck where they'd been standing. They scrambled behind data cores, returning fire. Enforcers advanced in formation. We're outnumbered, James shouted over the weapons fire. I know, Valeria's smile held savage joy, but we already won. Through the archive's high windows, James saw the plaza below. The ceremony crowd had stopped chanting. People stared at displays showing the truth. Some wept, others shouted. The carefully maintained order began fracturing. An enforcer rounded their cover. James fired, missed. The enforcer's rifle swung toward Valeria. Corin appeared from a side entrance, weapon raised. Commander, duck! The enforcer went down. Corin advanced with a dozen fighters, all wearing the resistance insignia. "Thought you might need backup," he said. The fight spilled into chaos, resistance fighters against Vorian's enforcers. James lost track of everything except keeping Valeria alive. They moved together, covering each other, fighting toward the exit. Vorian blocked their path. His ceremonial robes had been shed, revealing combat armor beneath. He drew a blade that hummed with energy. "You and me," he said to Valeria, "like it should have been 200 years ago." Gladly, she took a weapon from Corin, met Vorian's charge. They fought with the precision of people trained together since childhood. Each knew the other's patterns. Each anticipated moves. But Valeria had spent 2 centuries frozen, while Vorian had spent them training. His blade scored her side. She gasped, stumbled. He pressed his advantage, driving her back toward the open window. James fired. The shot went wide but caught Vorian's attention. The Lord Commander turned. "You're human," he sneered, "so eager to die for you." "He's more than that." Valeria surged forward, driving her blade through Vorian's guard. It pierced his shoulder. He roared, "He's everything you'll never understand." She disarmed him with a move James couldn't follow. Put him on his knees, her blade at his throat. "Your choice," she said quietly. "Surrender or die." Vorian spat at her feet. "I won't kneel to a traitor." "Then you'll kneel to history." She didn't kill him, stepped back. "Take him. He'll stand trial." Resistance fighters secured Vorian. More arrived by the minute, answering the broadcast. The tide had turned. Corin approached, bleeding but alive. "The people are rising, across every district. They're demanding answers." He smiled. "And they're asking for you, Commander." Valeria looked at James. "I can't do this alone." "Good thing you're not alone." He took her hand. Blood and stone dust covered them both. "Where you go, I go." They emerged onto the court's main balcony. Below, the plaza had transformed. No longer an ordered ceremony, but a mass of people demanding truth, demanding change. They saw Valeria and sound exploded. Cheers, chants, a roar that shook the stones. She raised her joined hand with James, his human skin against her green-tinted flesh, a symbol of everything the Ascendancy had tried to erase. "This is who we are," she called out. Her voice carried through amplifiers across the plaza. "This is who we've always been. They tried to make us forget, to make us fear. But love is stronger than stone. Truth is stronger than lies." The crowd's response drowned out everything else. Later, much later, they returned to the ruins, to the prison complex where thousands remained frozen. Valeria approached her sister's statue with James at her side. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded. Together they reached out, their joined touch against Eliana's stone cheek. Light bloomed, cracks spread, liquid streamed from stone eyes. Eliana's eyes opened, confused, afraid. Then she saw Valeria, and something broke in her expression. "Sister?" The word came out cracked, raw. "Is it over?" "It's over." Valeria pulled her into an embrace. "You're free. You're all free." They spent the next weeks awakening the others. Each touch, each freed soul, each life reclaimed from stone. James documented it all, the archaeologist in him unable to resist recording history as it happened. When the last statue cracked and fell away, Valeria stood in the empty complex with him. Thousands of people streamed above them toward the surface, toward new lives in a world that finally remembered truth. "What now?" James asked. "Now?" She turned in his arms. "Now we build something better, together." "Together," he agreed. Their kiss tasted like hope and stone dust, and the promise of futures that had once seemed lost. Above them, the last pieces of her stone prison fell away, leaving only warmth and skin and love that had survived 200 years of darkness. The statue had cried, but the woman was free. And in that freedom, an entire world found its way home.